Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. John Searle, in his article Minds, Brains, and Programs, after he's introduced the famous Chinese room thought experiment as an argument against the sorts of claims that advocates of strong AI are making about programs being able to be genuinely intelligent and understand things like stories, is going to consider a number of objections. The longest of the objections is what he calls the systems reply. And then after addressing that, he is going to look at 5 other replies made by people who don't accept his position. So the first one is what he calls the robot reply. And he says, suppose we wrote a different kind of program. Suppose we put a computer inside a robot, right? So you're introducing spatiality and the possibility of perhaps having experience of some sort. We might even talk about embodiment, although it's, not an organic body. But he says this computer would not just take in formal symbols as input and give out formal symbols as output. It would actually operate the robot so that it explores the world with the robot in such a way that the robot does something very much like, now notice what he includes here, perceiving, walking, moving about, hammering nails, eating, drinking, anything you like. So the robot could have a television camera that enabled it to see and arms and legs that enabled it to act. All of this would be controlled by the computer brain, and such a robot would, as opposed to a mere information processing, machine like the one in the Chinese room, have genuine understanding and other mental states. And Searle says, okay, why would that be the case? He says, first off, notice what you're doing there. You're changing the problem in such a way as to tacitly concede that cognition isn't just a matter of formal symbol manipulation, because this adds a set of causal relations with the outside world. So you're already going a little bit beyond what you planned. That's fine. Let's look at that. There's no reason to think that the addition of such perceptual and motor capabilities would actually add anything by way of understanding in particular, or intentionality more general. You're not going to just expand the scope of it and let it move around and get understanding and intentionality. And he says, we could also put a person inside the robot, and if we did that, we would see that it's just like the Chinese room, except maybe adding a few extra features to it. Information is still coming in from the outside. Output is still going out. You're not radically changing it. You're not going to get understanding or intentionality that way. Another interesting idea, which is one that more recent models of AI have drawn on, metaphorically, of course, because they can't do it in any literal way, is what he calls the brain simulator reply. He says, suppose we design a program that doesn't represent information that we have about the world, such as the information in these scripts, but simulates the actual sequence of neuron firings at the synapses of the brain of a native Chinese speaker when he understands stories in Chinese and gives answers to them. This machine then takes in Chinese stories and questions about them as input. It simulates the formal structure of actual Chinese brains in processing these stories, and it gives Chinese answers as outputs. And we could even, if we want to make it more complicated, imagine that it's a little bit more like our brains in that it isn't just one vast monistic system, but a whole bunch of subsystems connected together. And Searle says, yeah, you could certainly do that. Does that mean that the machine, the computer that is mimicking these neurons actually understands the Chinese stories? And he says, before I actually answer that, I want to point out another thing, sort of like what he did with the robot reply. It would be an odd reply for any partisan of artificial intelligence or functionalism to make. The whole point of strong AI, wasn't it that we don't need to know how the brain works? So why are you focusing deliberately on brains in that case? Wasn't it supposed to be that intelligence could be free of any sort of substrate or exact structured system in that way? We wanted to do psychology without undoing neurophysiology. So if we had to know how the brain worked to do AI, we wouldn't even bother with AI. We just learn how the brain worked. But let's say that that's the case. He says, all right, let's imagine the Chinese room experiment now. And instead of books or anything like that for taking the Chinese symbols coming in and giving Chinese symbols coming out, instead we had an incredibly complex set of, as he's going to say it, water pipes with valves connecting them. Why water pipes? Well, because neurons are like flowing electricity into each other at synapses. And so when the man receives the Chinese symbols, he looks up in the program written in English which valves he has to turn on and off. Each water connection corresponds to a synapse in the Chinese brain, and the whole system is rigged up so that after doing the right firings, that is after turning on all the right faucets, the Chinese answers pop out at the output end of the series of pipes. Searle says, where's the understanding in this system? It takes Chinese as input, simulates the formal structure of the brain, and then gives Chinese as output, but the man certainly doesn't understand Chinese. Are you going to claim that the water pipes understand Chinese? No. And so it doesn't matter whether we use water pipes or digital circuits or however we're going to map out the neurons in the brain. We're not getting intentionality. We're not getting understanding that way. So what if we took all three previous replies, the systems reply and the robot reply and the brain simulator reply, and we said, yeah, individually, they're not going to give us what we're looking for, but if we put them all together into one thing, like having a robot, which then has a computer inside of it, which both combines the system and the brain simulator, wouldn't that be more likely to give us understanding? So he says, they're not convincing by themselves, but you take them all three together, they're collectively much more convincing and even decisive. And he says, okay, I'm going to concede to you that if we ran into a robot coming to us from outside, and it seemed to, have understanding in the sense of engaging with us in ways that we would say, yes, that conveys understanding. We could ascribe intentionality and understanding to it as long as we knew nothing more about it. He says, besides appearance and behavior, the other elements of the combination are really irrelevant. If we could build a robot whose behavior was indistinguishable over a large range from human behavior, we would attribute intentionality to it. Pending, now this is key, some reason not to. What could be a reason not to? Knowing that it's a robot with a, formal system manipulator, brain of sorts, then we'd say, well, no. This doesn't really help the claims of strong AI. And he says, why not? Well, according to strong AI, instantiating a formal program with the right input and output is a sufficient condition of, and indeed constitutive of, intentionality. But that's question begging, that it isn't really intentionality. And he says, suppose we knew that the robot's behavior was entirely accounted for by the fact that a man inside was receiving uninterpreted formal symbols and sending out uninterpreted formal symbols. So the Chinese room, and it was according to a system, and there's this, brain simulator. We wouldn't buy it. So why would we buy it if it was just a unified computer system? There's no more reason to. And then Searle says something really quite interesting here. He says, I want to make a contrast to cases where we find it completely natural to ascribe intentionality. Who do we do this to? Well, human beings, but also, he says, certain other primate species like apes and monkeys. Okay, so higher level mammals. But also domestic animals like dogs. Dogs are, some dogs are smart, but compared to apes, they're kind of down there. Pigs are usually smarter than most dogs, or cats for that matter. Not that we're knocking them or anything like that, but we do ascribe intentionality to them and some degree of understanding that we wouldn't to this combination robot computer amalgam. So that's an important point. Why do we do that? He says the reasons we find it natural are roughly two. We can't make sense of the animal's behavior without ascribing intentionality. And we can see the beasts are made of similar stuff to ourselves, right? Given the coherence of the animal's behavior and the assumption of the same causal stuff underlying it, we assume the animal must have mental states, and the mental states must be produced by mechanisms made out of the stuff that's like our stuff. And we would do that for a robot until we realize what it is, i.e. a robot. There's two others that he brings up, and he's going to dispose of these a little bit more quickly. The other mind's reply is sort of a, well, what about this? Gotcha kind of argument that Searle just doesn't buy. It goes like this. How do you know that other people understand Chinese or anything else? Only by their behavior. Now, the computer can pass the behavioral test as well as they can in principle. So if you're going to attribute cognition to other people, other minds, you have to do so for computers. You just got to be fair with this sort of thing. And he says, the problem in this discussion is not how I know. That's an epistemological problem, that other people have cognitive states, but rather what it is that I'm attributing to them when I attribute cognitive states to them. I say that they actually understand a story in English or in Chinese or whatever it's going to be. I don't say that about the man in the Chinese room or about a digital computer that, however complex, maybe with a robot walking around, is going to take inputs and generate consistent outputs. He says, the thrust of their argument is that it couldn't just be computational processes and their output because the computational processes and the output can exist without the cognitive state, right? So this is not a very good objection. And then we have another not very good objection, what he calls many mansions reply. This is a kind of funny title. And he says, your whole argument presupposes AI is only about analog and digital computers. And at that point you could say, yeah, actually it is, because that's what we've got to work with at this time. But perhaps in the future we'll have other kinds of devices. He says that just happens to be the present state of technology. Whatever these causal processes are that you say are essential for intentionality, assuming you're right, Searle, eventually we'll be able to build devices that have these causal processes, and that will be artificial intelligence. So you're right about the present, but you're not right about possibility or the future or what we could imagine, however we want to frame it. And Searle could say,
Yeah, but we're not talking about that, and that is purely imaginary. He says, I don't really have any objection to this reply, but I will say this, and this is kind of like the responses to the second and third, right? It trivializes the project of strong AI by redefining it as whatever artificially produces and explains cognition. So, what we would nowadays call shifting the goalposts, right? You're no longer really making an argument about the same thing, and that is going to be a real problem. So you notice that Searle is going to address possible objections to his position on AI coming from his Chinese room experiment, and he's going to say none of these really get to the crux of the problem, and some of them are, in effect, remaining at the level of question begging.